All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for coming this afternoon. I just want to welcome you to our Central Texas Technology Solutions webinar on technology strategy for business owners. We're going to spend the next hour going over some high-level aspects of technology strategy, how it impacts business, things that as business owners or business managers to keep an eye on with regards to your technology plans. I just want to cover a little bit about CTTS and who we are. We were founded in 2002. We are a managed service provider for IT services. So you kind of think of managed service providers as a IT department for other companies. So we basically provide all sorts of services with regards to everything from computer repair to managed cloud services to hosted email. We are 100% committed to making sure that business owners have the most reliable and professional IT service in Central Texas. Like I said, we cover managed IT services, full help desk support, cloud computing, disaster recovery, business continuity, and voice over IP. And we're going to touch on different areas of that as we go through this presentation and talk about the impact that that has towards business. A little bit about myself. I've been in the IT world pretty much since I was a teenager. My first computer was an IBM PC Junior when my dad upgraded to an XT. Took an 11-year sidetrack off into Uncle Sam's Canoe Club. Spent 11 years in the United States Navy in the nuclear power program. And when I got out in '98, I went back into IT because I wasn't really all that thrilled with nuclear power. And I've done everything from desktop support to network administration to IT management. My previous employment was as an IT manager for a real estate development and resort company up in Washington State, and 4 years ago I came to Texas and joined CTTS's team. And so I've had 4 years of experience now on the consulting side, whereas before I was more on the corporate side of things. Love technology, love what it does for business, and really enjoy making sure that whatever solutions that we provide help to bring value and bring revenue to your business. So we're going to go ahead and dive in here. So for a business technology plan, there's really two aspects to it. One, we need to make sure that we're meeting our current needs, that we're efficient, that we have what we need to do. But we also have to keep an eye on what's coming down the road. Everything changes, technology changes, business changes, and we have to change and grow in order to maintain our competitive edge, be able to compete in the marketplace and do things as efficiently as possible to drive revenue. And that's really the big aspect that technology brings to business. Technology in and of itself is a wonderful thing, but unless it actually drives revenue or brings something to the bottom line in the business world, it's useless. It doesn't do anything. So what we want to do is we want to just take a look and make sure that, one, we're meeting the needs that we have now with regards to systems, software, efficiencies, being able to meet the needs of our clients depending on what particular vertical or market that our business is, and then also what we can do to maintain that competitive edge in the future. So what technology do you need now? Do you have any areas? And I'm going to kind of make this a little bit Socratic. So I'm going to be asking a lot of questions as we go through this, because part of the process here is to kind of spark thought, to get all of you to kind of think about where things are at right now with your business, where things need to go, maybe help to bring up some thoughts or ideas that you hadn't thought about before. So what technology do you need now? Do you have any technology deficiencies? Is what you currently have meeting your needs? Are you having issues with performance on your networks or your computers? Are your employees not as efficient as they can be? Are you wasting labor hours because maybe you don't have the systems that you need? So those are all things to consider. Basically, time is money. And if we have employees that are waiting on slow computer systems, having performance issues, then that's labor dollars that are not being used to help actually drive revenue. Also, what will you need 3 to 5 years down the road? I kind of like to look at that particular benchmark. You can go longer, but realistically, the way that technology turns over with systems and software, you're kind of looking at about a 3 to 5 year window. That applies for line of business software and licensing. That applies for operating systems, computer systems, as well as things like copiers. All of that kind of technology basically turns over and becomes obsolete relatively quickly within a 3 to 5 year time frame. But how and when you upgrade is going to be totally dependent upon what your needs are, what your business objectives are, and ultimately also what your budget is. So whatever dollars you do spend, you want to make sure that you spend those wisely and that you're getting the maximum return on your investment. What sources do you use to stay abreast of technology for your industry? There's a lot of different things out there. It could be publications that are specific to, if you're in the manufacturing vertical, that are specific to what type of manufacturing that you do. A lot of times you'll see advertisements or articles in there on different aspects of technology or software that are specific to your particular industry. Peer groups or networking, professional organizations. There are a lot of them in major metropolitan areas like we have here in Central Texas, the Austin, San Antonio area, in a variety of different functions. So specifically for us here at CTTS in the IT community, we have peer groups and professional organizations specifically related to like IT security, others that are more focused on general aspects of IT. So any type of networking or professional organizations that you may be able to take a part of with respect to your particular industry, that's very beneficial. Other things too could just be also, if you don't have that within your industry, depending on what you do, just professional contacts with other business owners or other business managers that are in the same type of industry. Sometimes it's very beneficial to kind of pass ideas and things back and forth. Hey, what's working for you and what's not working for you? How did you guys approach this particular problem and solve it? So all those kinds of things you can keep within your stable of ideas and solutions to be able to try to maximize the effectiveness of your company. Other question is, do you even have the time? I mean, many companies are so busy focused on what they're trying to get done that they may not necessarily have the time to stay abreast of the technology that's happening with regards to software and systems for their industry and their business. And so if that's a situation that you run into, then there are companies that can do that. There are some pure research companies out there, and of course there are MSPs like Central Texas Technology Solution, where we provide virtual CIO services in our managed services plan, where we will research that stuff on behalf of our clients. We'll go out there and we'll see what's in the market, look at solutions, do testing, report back, and do what we can to try to help our clients have the best systems and support that they can in order to achieve their objectives. Risk tolerance. So this is a really important area that's overlooked quite a bit. And we're going to kind of talk about risk tolerance as we go into some of the specific areas, with regards to like software compliance issues, regulatory issues, things like that. How risk averse are you? How risk averse is your company? I kind of like to use the analogy, if you've ever gone through your 401k or IRA planning with an investment advisor, and you sit down and you break out, okay, well, we've got these overseas emergent markets, they're high risk but high yield, and then we've got these domestic blue chip stocks, which are lower yield, but they're much more secure. It's kind of the same thing with regards to technology and business. How risk tolerant are you? Some companies like to be on the bleeding edge of technology because that gives them a competitive edge. But there's a risk to that. Some projects may not go the way that you think that they do. They may end up incurring more cost. Other companies are much more conservative. They don't want to turn over technology until they absolutely have to, and it's tried and true and it's proven. So I think every business owner, business manager kind of needs to take a look at that. What level of risk are you willing to assume for your business? And that also falls into areas of, just like we have business insurance for those kinds of situations that can be catastrophic and liability issues for our companies, we also have to look at that from a perspective of disaster recovery and business continuity. How much money will the business lose if a server dies or you lose internet for a long period of time? How does that impact your operations? How much money will you lose due to downtime? How much can you afford to lose? If those are things that haven't been thought about or looked at or identified, then that can be a very potentially scary area. And so I would encourage everybody to take some time and really take a look at doing a risk assessment of their business and figuring out, how much revenue per hour do we generate and how much will it cost us if we end up having substantial downtime or systems outage. The smaller the business, sometimes the harder that tends to be. I don't know the statistic off the top of my head, but I have heard that for small and medium business markets, any significant downtime can actually sometimes cause the business to fail and go out of business. So, and that's something that we would never want to see happen to everybody. So it's important to look at risk, look at doing a risk assessment, and figure out what is needed in order to be able to keep your business running in event of some sort of a disaster, or to recover from something once it happens. So we're going to start kind of looking at these different areas of ideas and thoughts to think about as you lay out your technology plan. So questions to kind of look at: is your business static or is it distributed? Are you basically one location where everything is in-house? You don't have to worry about a lot of remote things. Is your business distributed? Do you have multiple sites, multiple locations? Are they within a metropolitan area, or are they across multiple states? Are they international? Are you geographically distributed? All of those things factor into how you'll fashion your technology solutions to be able to operate effectively and competitively. If you happen to have, single site, single location, everything's under one building, life's a lot easier. You basically can go ahead and not have to worry about site-to-site VPN or connectivity between sites, distributed systems for files access, things like that. So whether you're static or distributed affects your hardware. If you're distributed, do you need multiple servers at different sites in order to take care of your files and your applications? Is it possible that you might end up needing additional router equipment? Do you have any kind of special considerations with regards to how data flows, remote access requirements, things like that? Systems, so again, outside of just straight hardware, from a security standpoint, do you have distributed security requirements where you have multiple sites, you need to feed camera data or any other type of security data back to a central location or repository? Should things be stored off-site? Is there local backup storage for fast recovery as well as off-site in the case that there's some sort of physical disaster on-site? So taking a look at your layout of how the business is structured will affect that. Cloud. Does the cloud make sense for you? In this day and age, cloud systems have become very mature. They've become very reliable. In many ways, they're superior to on-premise systems, especially with regards to email. Back in the day, local email servers were very important. They were kind of the way that we handled our email. It seemed like every company had an Exchange server or something similar. In this day and age, though, local email servers are actually more of a business reliability than they are a benefit. You have a single point of failure of your email server and your internet connection, whereas hosted email solutions are much more robust. They're stored in data centers. The providers have multiple power grids to the data centers. They have multiple internet connections. They're in server farms, so if a server fails, it's not a big deal. Everything is set up to be very scalable and have a lot of redundancy and fault tolerance. So that's why we are very big fans ourselves of hosted email solutions. We just think it makes much more sense and is much more reliable from a business standpoint. Also, there are other benefits as well with the ability to access that email from anywhere, whereas, like I said, if you have the email system locally, it could cause some issues if you have an internet outage and you can't get to your email. Cloud systems also in this day and age, it's not just email and applications that are in the cloud, but we're talking full-blown network infrastructure. Infrastructure as a service, which is called IaaS, if you've ever seen that buzzword or heard that, has been around for a few years. Kind of the new buzzword over the last couple of years is desktop as a service or workplace as a service. You may hear that mentioned. That's basically not only having the server infrastructure in the cloud, but your desktops as well, so that they can be accessed from anywhere. Here at Central Texas Technology Solutions, we do have VDI solutions, virtual desktop infrastructure, where we actually have clients' entire network infrastructures out in the cloud. Their file server, their directory server, their desktops, they can access those through desktop applications, so they can connect from their work machine, they could connect from their home machine, tablet support, even your phone if you wanted to, although sometimes depending on the size of the phone it's kind of hard because you don't have a lot of desktop real estate there. But all of that is becoming not only mainstream, but kind of the way that things are going in the long term. I kind of foresee a day where we will have basic hardware devices and everything is going to basically be provisioned from the cloud. It's all going to come off the cloud. You'll have connectivity providers, which will basically be your connection to the internet, and you'll have content providers, which will basically be everything and anything that you want with regards to the business world, business applications, even to personal home streaming, which we're already seeing in multimedia markets with regards to like Sling TV, PlayStation View, Google bought YouTube and started their own streaming service this year. You've got Spotify. So a lot of the things that you see and probably use day to day in your personal life, that same type of thing is already hitting the business world and is becoming even more pervasive. I mean, we have QuickBooks Online. A lot of different companies are starting to offer their services online. I think there's going to come a day and age where even Microsoft is going to totally go that route. You won't even be able to buy any type of box copy software from them anymore. It's just going to totally be subscription based. That's where a lot of things are heading. Telephony. We've had traditional PBX phone systems for a long time, your private branch exchange phone systems, your traditional, here's your phone system in the closet, it's all connected up to your phone company's wiring, and then you have your phones out on your desks. Years ago, we kind of started branching into voice over IP. That's become very popular and very reliable. So in this day and age, that's kind of abstracted again out to the cloud, your entire telephone system. So no longer do you have a phone system that lives on premise. It actually is out in the cloud hosted by the provider, and basically you just have your telephones, you plug them into the network, they automatically connect up to the hosted system in the cloud, pull down their configuration and their information, and you're off to the races. So, and in a distributed environment, that kind of telephony is much easier and more cost-effective than your traditional phone systems. With traditional phone systems, you have to have interconnectivity between them. So a lot of times there would be very expensive circuit charges to interconnect those back in the day. Whereas now we're pretty much using the internet itself to interconnect everything and anything. And we can do that in such a way that it's secure, it's encrypted between the phone and the cloud provider. So it's just much easier. And cloud systems are incredibly robust this day with telephony. You have full call routing features, call answering features. You can do automated attendance or non-automated attendance, ring groups. You can do forwarding set on schedules. Ourselves, we are telephony providers for a company called Nextiva for voice over IP. So like here, I'm doing this webinar from my home office today. I happen to have a voice over IP phone sitting here on my home office desk. I have another one in my office desk in Georgetown, and they're exactly the same extension. When I get a phone call, they both ring, so no matter where I'm at, I just pick it up and it's just like normal. I also have the ability to roll it over to my cell phone. So all of those features are very robust nowadays and very beneficial towards business and efficiencies. So that's kind of looking at whether you're static or distributed. So I want to talk a little bit about monitoring and management now. Monitoring and management is incredibly important in the IT world. It's kind of like the check engine light on your car. Back in the day, before computer controls, you pretty much kind of had to have a feel for what was going on with your vehicle. A lot of times you didn't know there was a problem until the steam started coming out of the hood and you could smell burning oil. Once computer controls started getting implemented, you'd have a check engine light. You wouldn't necessarily know exactly what that meant other than to take it to the shop and have it looked at. Well, in this day and age, they're pretty sophisticated. Your ASC technicians have a little device that they plug into the computer port on your vehicle and gives them very detailed error codes as to exactly what's going on with the car. Depending on the sophistication of the computer controls for the vehicle, it'll tell them exactly what sensor is broken, what's happening, what the operating conditions are, really help them to narrow in quickly and efficiently on what is wrong with the vehicle and how to fix it. And it's the same thing with monitoring and management in the IT world. Preventive maintenance, do you have monitoring of your systems to identify potential issues before they become problems? If not, you're pretty much stuck in the corrective maintenance world. You're only fixing problems after they become problems. And a lot of times that will cause downtime, loss of revenue, could potentially impact, clients if there's something that you can't get to somebody when you need to. So preventive maintenance is very important. Helps to identify problems before they become problems that cost you time and money. For us here at CTTS, we have a full monitoring and management platform that we use as part of our managed services. It will monitor computers and servers. It'll let us know if there are hard drive issues, if there's performance issues on the machine. Let's say the processor is spiked or memory utilization is too high. Could lead us to an indication that there's some sort of a problem with a piece of software on that computer. Also, it lets us know whether or not the computer is patched. Our remote management monitoring solution takes care of all the patching and the upgrades, not just for Windows, but also for third-party software like Java, Adobe Reader, things like that. Some things that are much more difficult to manage that in the past have traditionally had to have been manual upgrades. Another aspect of monitoring and management that's really important too is capacity planning. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Do you have what you need now? Is what you currently have working for you, and will it work for you 3 to 5 years from now? So capacity planning, over time, what tends to happen, especially in the data realm, is you start to accumulate files and folders, people generate data. A lot of times we don't necessarily kind of go back and review that data to see whether or not it's still relevant. Is this something that we need to continue to keep on a server? Or is it something that we should archive off? In my previous capacity in IT management, I would schedule annual meetings with our business unit managers because we had marina, golf, hotel, food and beverage, real estate sales, real estate development. We actually even owned the local water and sewer company. And so we would sit down every year, not just to go over the budget, but also to sit down and go through their department data and say, okay, what still makes sense? Do we need to restructure anything? Has anything changed in the business unit? What can we archive off that's no longer useful? Or if it's just totally, obsolete, can we just delete it? That kind of helps to keep things clean, keep things functional, don't have to spend as much money slapping in additional hard drive storage to support data that may or may not necessarily be beneficial any longer. So capacity planning is what that is. It's basically looking at, okay, is the hardware that we have today that's supporting our needs still going to meet our needs in 3 to 5 years? A lot of times, unfortunately, the only time that those things are looked at is when you're getting ready to go through a major migration. And that is one way to handle it, but the downside to that is that takes a lot longer on the planning and the project work for a migration. Whereas if that's kind of maintained and kept clean, it's much less problematic when you have to go through those technology turnover cycles. And then, do you have some sort of an ongoing maintenance program to stay on top of things and fix things when they become a problem and maintain your systems? Or are you just strictly in break fix mode? Do you only have some sort of support when something breaks? So again, maintenance programs can be very beneficial because the whole purpose and the point of it is to make sure that we identify issues, fix those issues when they're little issues before they become big issues and actually start costing you money. Corrective maintenance. So if we don't have some sort of a preventive maintenance program, then we are pretty much stuck in the corrective maintenance realm. I mean, we're just basically fixing things once they're broken. 9 times out of 10, that's a much more costly solution, and it has higher business impact. Like I said previously, you're looking at downtime, you're looking at possibly potential problems with getting things to clients, things that can be revenue generating events, which nobody wants to see or have happen. So we at CTTS, like I said, we do have a full-blown monitoring and management solution that we have in place to take care of all those issues. And then our VA CIO services, we reach out, make sure that what's working is working, identify the things that aren't, and come up with solutions to fix those issues and make sure that things stay running properly, smoothly, and efficient for your company. So now let's kind of jump into line of business software. There are some service providers that kind of focus on certain verticals. You have some out there that just strictly deal with healthcare. You have others that just strictly deal with manufacturing or financial services. There are a lot of managed service providers, though, including ourselves, that we don't really particularly we're not focused on any particular vertical. We have clients that are in the manufacturing realm. We have clients that are legal, financial services, healthcare, pretty much a little bit of everything. So that kind of gives us a unique perspective of the overall IT landscape as a whole. A lot of times we'll see things in one area of business that we might be able to mention to a client in another area of business that may be beneficial to them. Line of business software tends to be, for the most part, very vertical specific, unless it's something like an accounting package that covers all sorts of different types of businesses. But even within accounting realms, you have some pretty specific types of accounting software for certain types of businesses. So the line of business software is from an IT perspective, the heart and soul of what it is that you're doing, because this is what you're running your business off of. Line of business software could be, if you're a financial services organization, it could be your CRM and your links into investment organizations. From a manufacturing standpoint, it could be some production software that you're using to basically govern your manufacturing process. So on line of business software, what we need to look at there is what type of requirements do you have? Does it impact your hardware and your networking? And this is really going to be important when you're looking at your technology turnover. So when you're doing upgrades, we always have to look at, do we have to also upgrade the line of business software at the same time? Sometimes if software hasn't been upgraded in quite some time, it may not be compatible with the new version of the operating system or the hardware that is being put in. So all of that has to be addressed. Is it client server? Is there a part of it that sits on the server and then you have a client application? Are there any networking requirements for that? If it's distributed, if you're a distributed company at multiple sites or geographically distributed, then that's something that really has to be looked at. Do we need to have multiple server software at different sites in order to be able to load balance? And what does that look like? So all of this comes into looking at your line of business software, the applications that run your business. Is that software going to be local, or is it going to be cloud-based? If it's local, then we definitely have to look at those hardware and networking requirements, because that's going to directly affect how well that application performs in your environment. If it's cloud-based, then we're kind of looking at other things. Make sure that the cloud environment supports it, make sure that internet connectivity supports it, and how is it accessed? Is it accessed by like a remote server login, or are you actually accessing that application directly over the web, kind of like a QuickBooks Online type of thing? So that impacts your line of business software. Is it a standard purchase or is it subscription-based? Many things now are moving towards subscription-based. There's pros and cons to both of that, and that's something that's important to look at from a budgetary standpoint. Standard purchases, they tend to be, pay me now instead of pay me later, so you have a higher CapEx out of that, whereas subscription-based may be more cash flow friendly if that's more advantageous to your budget. But that could be problematic if you like the CapEx, or if you're used to like leasing, where you're going to lease your hardware and software in one big chunk. So those are things to consider, not just from a project standpoint, but also from your budget standpoint. And software maintenance, I cannot emphasize enough. I always advocate that on line of business software, that you maintain software maintenance on that. I know sometimes it seems like a pain. It seems like you're not getting your money out of that if you don't have issues, but software maintenance is like insurance. It's one of those things that you pay for and you pray that you never have to use, but when you do need it, it's hugely important. That software maintenance will cover your ongoing maintenance and support, either phone support or email support. Depending on the type of software or the system, there could also be some on-site with regards to that. Also, a lot of times your software maintenance, by keeping it current, that also entitles you to upgrades to the software. So you can continue to see patches and upgrades to versions where there's increased functionality or actually bug fixes, so that if you've got a piece of line of business software, it's got something quirky with it that the developers have fixed in a newer version, you want to be able to make sure that you can upgrade to that version and overcome that problem. So software maintenance is hugely important. I strongly recommend that any line of business software, that software maintenance is maintained on that. If not, it's kind of like, going back to the corrective maintenance standpoint, where in the long run, it's going to be more costly and more problematic when you end up coming to those technology turnover cycles and then you're upgrading from a seriously old version of software, or God forbid something happens with that software and you need support and the version is so old that the manufacturer doesn't even support it anymore. So that's when things can become very, very painful. Next area I kind of want to talk about is print, copy, and scan. This is way more, I think, becoming more and more and more important as time goes on. We're so overwhelmed with information in this day and age and the different avenues for getting it. So a lot of times, and some companies still do, the old paradigm used to be, you know, a printer on every desk and local desktop scanners if you needed it. But now, more and more increasingly, it's much more cost effective to look at network-enabled multifunction devices. So a lot of those could be large multifunction printers with scan capability. In this day and age, really the biggest one is your multifunction copier. So you've got photocopy, sometimes fax, if that's something that you need, as well as scanning, not just to file, but to email. That's important. And then also printing. Tends to be much more cost effective, not just from a cost per copy standpoint, but also from a maintenance standpoint, to have a larger multifunction device and then maybe a handful of individual desktop printers for those people that really need it. The more of those devices that you have, one, the more cost in toner that you have, but two, the more cost in repair, because over time they need maintenance kits, the rollers start to wear out, you know, things happen, and the maintenance and repair costs can start to add up quite a bit. So we're big fans and big believers in multifunction devices. They can be centrally located, they can handle a lot of different aspects of what you need as far as information in your printing capability. Things to think about with regards to this realm: lease versus buy. With copiers, there really is that kind of hard 3 to 4 year technology turnover. I usually recommend the lease option for those simply because the technology does turn over on them relatively quickly, and depending on the use, they will start to have problems after 3 to 4 years if they're very heavy use. Even with maintaining maintenance, you know, over time rollers start to wear out, you know, tolerances start to get a little bit wider on those devices. So a lot of times doing like a dollar buyout, and then usually what happens with the lease, depending on the provider that you're working with, you know, be it Ricoh, Canon, Kyocera, whomever, you can bundle the removal of the existing equipment into the lease on the next equipment that comes in. Makes it easy. They'll be able to transfer the configurations, the address books, a lot of the settings. So it's pretty much an easy and seamless transition for you. Buying is also an option if you are interested in going ahead and, I mean, if you can find a good enough deal that makes it cost effective, then it may be worthwhile to buy it. A lot of times, if you buy the copier, it may be a little bit more challenging depending on the vendor for a maintenance contract. So that's just something to kind of figure out when you're going through that process. Maintenance contracts, mostly with, even with some network printers, you can get maintenance contracts where it covers the normal maintenance kits, the repair items to keep them in good working order. With copiers, a lot of times it'll also include a certain amount of copy per month. So it's kind of beneficial to have an idea on how much you do a month, both in black and white and in color. That will affect your costs. Usually with a maintenance contract, you'll have, let's say, you know, 3,000 copies a month in black and white, maybe 1,000 in color for X amount of dollars a month. And that will include all of your toner, that will include your maintenance, pretty much anything other than a corrective maintenance item where a piece of hardware breaks in the device and it has to be replaced, although a lot of times that's going to be covered under warranty if it's some sort of a manufacturer's issue. So maintenance contracts, like software maintenance, I think are very important with regards to this area of your infrastructure, because you don't want to get stuck having to have downtime where a machine goes bad and then you're kind of stuck not being able to print or scan. Centralized versus individual, so kind of like what you talked about, you know, does it make sense for your business to have a good centralized multifunction device that everybody can use, you know, everybody can scan to email or scan to file, or does it make more sense to go the route of individual devices where you have individual printers? Again, it always depends on the environment, but for the most part, I think centralized is going to be much more cost effective, definitely easier from a maintenance standpoint, and usually more full featured. It's pretty amazing what they've built into these devices. I mean, we just went through a migration with a client. Some of these actually have software now that can interface directly with line of business applications to scan right into the document management solutions. The finishers, you know, obviously you can do stapling and hole punching, but I mean, they have mail finishers where you can even go so far as to separate print jobs by user. Each user has their own tray. I mean, that's not going to be beneficial for some folks, but for other folks, it could be hugely beneficial. So there are a lot of really great features and options with regards to the multifunction devices in the copier realm. And then what types of scanning do you need to look at having support for? Is email scanning good enough for you folks? Is that something that you want to do? Or do you also need file scanning? Might not be either or, might be both and. So email scanning is great, it's convenient, you get it in your inbox. The only challenge with that is, do you end up having larger and larger mailboxes because you have so much attachment data in them, and if they don't get cleaned out, that can cause some problems with Outlook after a while. Depending on the type of email service that you have, if you have a size limit on your mailboxes, you may end up running into that. So again, there's trade-offs with regards to the functionality and sometimes the problems that can cause too. File network, is that a network, is that scanning to a network file server, or is that to a local device? You know, what's your need with regards to that? If you do have a server infrastructure, scanning to network folders is usually the way to go. It's highly beneficial. It's very easy for people to get to those folders over the network. Yet it keeps all of that data centrally located on your file servers where it can be backed up easily and efficiently. Application scanning becoming more and more common. Like I said, some of these copier providers are building application program interfaces so that they can do scanning directly into certain types of document management systems. And some of them now are actually selling their own document management systems. There's some pretty impressive stuff that's out there right now. So that kind of covers your print, copy, and your scan area. Networking. So far, we've kind of talked about the individual applications and systems, you know, kind of use the car analogy. Now we're kind of talking about the highway. So it's great to have a phenomenal vehicle that can get you from point A to point B, but it's kind of hard if you're going over a rutted wagon trail as opposed to a super highway. Networking considerations to think about as you're fashioning your technology plan. Is it just a single site? If so, that's pretty easy. You don't have to worry about a lot of challenges that other businesses do that are distributed companies. Or is it multi-site? And if it's multi-site, do you need any sort of tie-in for systems between the two sites? Do you need some sort of site-to-site VPN or some other method of connection? So that's very important. Remote access. Do you only need access within the four walls of your building, or do you have the need to work remotely, work from home? Do you have Salesforce that happens to be on the road quite a bit that needs access into your systems? What method of remote access is going to make the best sense for you? VPN is still widely used, although it's starting to go the way of the dinosaur. There are much better options and solutions out there than VPN. Kind of the whole desktop as a service, infrastructure as a service that we talked about earlier, I think is in the process of replacing VPN as more and more systems just go totally to the cloud. The access is a lot easier. The really great thing about infrastructure as a service and desktop as a service is in a traditional VPN environment, all of the processing and the computing that you're doing is on your individual computer, and you're pulling all of your file data, any other information, you know, if you're running an application over that VPN connection, all of that data has to pass over the wire. And depending on the connection speed, with VPN, you know, you're a slave to the internet speed at both ends. So if you happen to be in an area that has some, you know, internet challenges, or you don't have a lot of bandwidth, you know, some of the rural connections are incredibly slow. There are some places here in Central Texas that are still suffering from like 3 meg DSL, you know, some areas that it's almost barely better than dial-up for the most part. So that can cause a huge problem for VPN connections and being able to work productively. The beautiful thing about infrastructure as a service and desktop as a service is that it's kind of like a remote desktop environment where you're accessing the remote system. All of the processing and everything is actually happening on that remote system. It's just that your little remote program is basically the only thing it's sending over the wire is basically your graphics data, you know, for what you're seeing on the screen, and your mouse and your keyboard clicks. It's way more lightweight. It's much more forgiving for lower bandwidth. You can put a lot more people on any given bandwidth connection. So that's kind of where things are heading. Slowly but surely, that type of service is going to be eclipsing and eventually doing away with VPN over time. Cloud networking. So like I talked about, you can have all of your systems in the cloud, access remote desktops, virtual desktops. Basically everything can be done off-site. Definitely some benefits to that. It's much more easy in a distributed environment. You have ubiquitous access from pretty much anywhere you are. The VDI solution that we use, you know, we can use it from Macs, from PCs, from Linux machines. We can use it on our tablets. We can use it on phones if you really want to suffer under such a small display screen, but it's there. And it's a very easy, very quick, works like a champ. We're very, very thrilled. We here at CTTS internally have adopted that model a while back. And so in our day-to-day operations and what we do, that's how we do our business. I mean, all of our systems themselves are cloud related and cloud managed, from our Meraki networking systems to our remote monitoring and management, our help desk system, even our desktops, our files, all of that stuff is all cloud now. So, and then what we've done, because we still have some of those printing and scanning things that we need to take care of, is we actually have a site-to-site VPN connection from our office to the cloud system so that we can do network scanning to the file server in the cloud and then retrieve all that data right from our virtual desktop. So very simple, very easy, something that we really like and is kind of the way of the future. Hybrid cloud is another option. Some companies have invested quite a lot in their premise systems. They want to move to the cloud, but it's just not feasible to basically be able to just, you know, hull and anchor, just pick up and move everything to the cloud. One, from a cost standpoint, it could be prohibitive. From an operational standpoint, it's almost certainly going to be prohibitive depending on the size of the organization and what they have as far as infrastructure. So there are options to kind of do hybrid cloud, where you can set up cloud systems and kind of tie those to premise systems and slowly start to migrate and move things off to the cloud. That tends to be a migration path for larger companies that have a lot of infrastructure that they have to account for in order to make a seamless and smooth transition up to the cloud. So that kind of covers a lot of what I wanted to talk about. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to go ahead and type those out. We'll definitely address those. I hope that this has been beneficial. Really, what I wanted to do was to try to kind of cover a lot of different areas with regards to, you know, how technology affects your business, questions that we should be thinking of, thoughts and ideas. If anybody does have any questions down the road, our contact information is right here. Please feel free to reach out to us. Some of you here know me. By all means, please go ahead and shoot me an email or give me a call if you have any questions. Like I said, Central Texas Technology Solutions, we do offer a full range of managed service provider solutions, including virtual CIO. So we are here to help you with your technology plans, if that is something that you would like us to do, and to look at what the landscape is now and what it's going to be like 3 to 5 years or longer down the road, and to help you to make sure that you keep that competitive business edge. So I will go ahead and say have a great day to everybody. Thank you for attending, and once again, if you have any needs or desires or questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much.